What's up, guys? Welcome back to TBN Offroad. In today's video, we're going to start the front end. It's still our Rock Krawler long arm kit. It converts the front to a 3-link. So we've got to get the Jeep up in the air. We'll cut the old factory brackets off. There's cross members we got to weld on for the upper control arm mounts. But axle-wise, everything is pretty simple. You're laughing at me.
You're cutting them off.
Yeah, I'm cutting
You're
them
welding them off.
So, yeah, this is going to be the front portion. A little bit simpler than the rear. We're not going to stretch anything up here. So we'll go ahead and get it up in the air and start it. We've got cross members we've got to weld in. These guys locate off of the bolts for the transmission cross member. And I've got to pull the bolts out. If we weren't going to replace this, I got to pull the bolts out anyways and support the transmission to locate these guys. So while I was under there, the factory transmission cross member is completely smashed. So we went ahead and upgraded to the Clayton heavy duty cross member. This thing's 3/16 steel. It is absolute beef. So that's going to work out great for us. We'll get under there, support the transmission. We'll pull 2 bolts out on each side. We'll slide the old one out. I'll go ahead and slide the new one in, and then we'll slide both these guys up in there. I've already drilled the relief holes for the nuts on the back here. You have to drill out the frame. And then bolt everything up. I've got to clean some powder coat off of these so they're ready to weld, and then we'll go ahead and get these guys welded in. All right, bolts are out. Now hopefully she slides right off. Trans is supported. There we go. Get this guy, huh? Oh, that's great. Hey, there we go. We'll go grab the Clayton one and shove it up in there. That's not light. There we go. This is not fun to do by yourself. Corey decided to go to work, and here I am. Guess what? I think that's backwards. It helps if you try to put it in the right direction. Tech tip, not fun to do by yourself. You're gonna have to get a hammer. See how lucky we get. Yeah, gonna need a punch. Okay, like everything fun, I didn't record it, but there was a piece of exhaust from the old system. This guy. It was up on the passenger side. We're gonna do a complete custom exhaust for this when we're done. So I think this was gonna be in the way of the new upper control arm mounts that we got to weld in. So I went ahead and stuck a spud bar in here and pulled it back down. Didn't record any of it, of course, and got this guy out. So now the holes are lined up. Let's see if we can get some bolts in there. There's one. There's 2. On to the other side. You guys think I'll get lucky? Not even close. More hammering. Guys, I told you this is Chubbs' shop and he's here supervising. He's doing a good job. I appreciate you letting me use your shop.
Sonny, anytime. I'm just glad we don't need it.
All right, that guy's in there. Oh, I gotta put the transmission bolts in. That would be bad. Chubbs was worried about me because I cut my finger with a grinder earlier. What do we say, guys? Speed was first and safety is third. I paid for that. The battery would be helpful. Come on, supervisor, where was that? That middle one spun. Oh, I didn't strip it. Or I did. Okay, I went to Menards last night to try to find this bolt or this nut, and the two nuts that I bought are the wrong size. So we're just gonna move on to the upper control arm mounts, and I'll find another bolt for that later. So we gotta pick this mount up, hold it where it needs to be, slide the two cross member bolts in, and that'll locate it, and then we can tack it. Okay, so it's the next day. I had to go in and buy some nuts and bolts to make all this work. So I went to the dealership and paid $9 for this stupid flange nut. I tried it was an M10 1.5 from Menards, and it did not want to start. So I just went and actually got the real Mopar nut. So we're gonna try that. We're gonna see if the stud is actually stripped or if this will work. So fingers crossed on that one. And then because I had the heavy duty cross member is thicker than the factory one, so that plus the thickness of the upper control arm mounts made the stock transmission cross member bolts like an inch too short. So I went ahead and bought grade 8, their standard size because it didn't have metric, but it still fits a hole. So it's a 1/2 inch by 6 inch long bolt. So that should work for us. So we'll try to get this guy up and mount the transmission to the cross member, and then I'll replace all these bolts. I suck and forgot to film this, so spoiler alert, everything worked out fine. All right, guys, we're underneath looking at the front passenger side of the Jeep. We're going to remove this lower control arm, cut the factory control arm bracket off. Then I'll go ahead and, since I've got room, finish welding the upper and lower control arm mounts, and then we're just going to do one arm at a time. So that's kind of the sequence of events here. All right, guys, after forever, we finally got the lower control arm, the factory control arm mounts removed. Plasma cutter, pry bars, grinding wheel, everything. Those are finally out of the way. We're gonna go ahead and weld up the upper and lower control arm mounts. And there's one on this side too, it's also removed. All right, guys, we got the lower control arms welded up. Guess it's the lowers and the upper. You had to weld vertically, and then the bottoms on both of them there. All right, so now that we got the mounts welded in and the lower control arm mount removed, we're gonna move on. This is the passenger side upper control arm. We're gonna remove the control arm and then cut this bracket off so we have clearance for the new arm. Okay, so my give a crap failed right about there. I did at least the bottoms. I got it smooth where I think the arm's gonna cycle. If it hits the top, I'll grind it some more, but we just went ahead and hit everything with some paint. We're letting that dry. There is a kind of a tie-in cross member that goes between this mount and that mount. So it's just 4 bolts, slap it on. So we're gonna do that now while that paint dries, and then we'll start installing some control arms. We haven't removed this upper that was on there yet. We're gonna try to do this one at a time so we don't lose the whole axle, but the directions have you cut this off. I'm hoping that since it's a 3-link, we can just install the lower and it's not gonna interfere. but we'll find out once we get everything installed. So that might go. If not, I'm just going to leave it because it takes forever to cut these things off. Okay guys, the jack's in the way there, but the long arms are installed on the passenger side, and you can see how straight that spring is. We still have one upper on this side, and look how bowed that is. So that's what we gain by going long arm, is this axle is going to stay forward when it droops, and I'll still keep some wheelbase there. That's a major improvement. All right guys, so the last thing we got to do is remove the upper from the driver's side, and then we did decide to go ahead and cut that bracket off. The directions say we should. We were hoping that we had enough clearance with the lower, but we're just going to go ahead and cut everything off so it's nice and clean and out of the way. So that's next. Okay, so we cut off the bracket. You had to be super careful of these fuel lines. You guys can kind of see I just barely nicked the outer coating with the grinder. We even stuffed some gloves up here to try to protect it. I had to switch from the plasma cutter to the grinder. So if you guys do this, just be super, super careful up here. There's no real way to get those out of the way either. So honestly, we're just going to leave this like this. I'll hit it with some paint to keep it from rusting, but I really don't want to be up there with a grinding wheel, knowing that we already nicked that fuel line once. And other than it being ugly, it's really not going to matter. So that's out of the way. We'll go ahead and get the lower installed. Pick this up and wiggle it back and forth. There. There. There we go. Okay, next we have the Steer Smarts Yeti XD kit for the front of this. This is a TerraFlex, I think, HD tie rod and drag link. And it's been okay. I haven't bent it, which is surprising. It's held up well that way, but the grease zerks that are in all the ends are recessed, and to get a gun in there to grease this thing is a giant pain in the butt. I've tried locking, I've tried just normal, Harbor Freight and an AutoZone and all the different grease guns, hoping to find a better solution. And this far side over here, I've ripped the grease zert out of the threads at least 3 or 4 times. So we're over that. We're going to upgrade with more beef. And I think we also got a TMR, I can't remember, but it's a different brand clamp as well. So we're going to start removing the front steering and replace with the Steer Smarts. All right, guys, it's all installed. We greased the ends. We had to kind of walk the top bolt and all the connecting bolts there all at the same time. That was kind of a pain, but otherwise it's all in. More beef. Like most plans, they get blown up and you have to make changes. So I I originally ordered this kit as a 4-link front, 3-link rear. When I received the kit, it was a 3-link. We had some confusion between myself and the off-road shop and Rock Krawler. So once we installed the passenger side control arm, I realized that it was way too small to be a 3-link. So I talked to High Lift and I talked to Rock Krawler, and I think ultimately it's just going to be best to go back to a 4-link front. I do still drive this on the road sometimes, so that'll be nice. So I had Rock Krawler ship me a new control arm, and this is the driver's side control arm. So last little piece of the puzzle, we're going to put this in 4-link the front. I've got a new track bar to put in the front and then tighten everything down. The front should be done then, should. So we'll go ahead and get this thing put in. So earlier in the video, I thought I could just cut this off. I was worried about nicking that fuel line up there, and I thought if I ever did go 4-link, I would have room, and I did not. So I went ahead and ground down the remainder of that bracket and sprayed it with some paint. So that should be dry enough now. We'll try to go ahead and get this arm in. Well, my watch stopped the video in the middle of it, but we got the control arm in. Definitely needed to clearance that bracket. That's nice and tight, but it lined right up. Control arm's in. Just need to tighten the bolts and we're good to go. All right, guys, the last thing we had to do was put this thermal barrier around the upper control arm mounts, and that's just supposed to protect the rubber in here from the exhaust. So you can see how tight that's going to be. So it was a sticky adhesive, like foam backed insulation with some tape around it. Both sides are taped up, good to go. All right, the last thing we got to do to the front is install a new track bar. The one that's on there is the same as what this is, but it's 2 years old. I went ahead and just replaced everything underneath, so everything's brand new. So I've already set this to length per the directions. We'll pull the old one off and put this one on. All right, this guy's loose. Cool. There. One track bar. 32 5/8 was the front track bar measurement. I went ahead and pulled the old one off. We got bolts through both ends, so that should be pretty close. It looks like, you know, the tube might be just a touch different, but those lengths should be right. Time to put it in. When you install these, there's an O-ring on each side. You got to make sure those don't fall off. They like to wobble out as you install it. And then there's also a grease fitting at the bottom you got to install, so don't forget those. There. How about that? Beautiful. I'll show you guys the ratchet strap setup here if you have to do this. So in this case, I needed the axle to move passenger. So I hooked it up to the, where's my finger? To the shock mount over there. And then I hooked it to the frame. That's the old slider mount. And just added a little bit of pressure. I only needed like a 1/16, so that was it. Just what she needed. Track bar is in. I'll put the nuts on, and that is the end. Okay, that wraps up this one. Front is done. Moving on to the next thing. We got plenty to do on this Jeep, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.